Good morning. I love that music. Jones and Company. Matter of fact, they'll be here with us next week. Welcome to another Tuesday with Thom, and I am Thom, of course. And today we're going to talk about film, television, football, COVID-19. And so let's just get with it. But let me tell you, first of all, I'm sitting here, not quite in the middle of a hurricane, but there's a hurricane on the way. And so if you hear raindrops or maybe you hear the wind howl, it's just a little old Hurricane Sally out here that's paying us a visit. And it's not quite here yet because it hadn't come ashore. It's going to come ashore about 200 miles from us, but we're going to get a lot of the winds because we're in what they call that front right quadrant. So send a prayer up for us, and hopefully everything will be good. Okay, let me say something here. I'm talking about COVID-19 and about whether the kids should play or not, especially the kids. Now, the pros, it's a whole different thing to me. But I have to tell you, man, I got a kick out of watching the NBA. That Toronto-Boston series, oh, my goodness. I mean, the last 3 games pretty much went down to the last shot every game. It was just exciting. I was excited to see Tom Brady and Drew Brees would play each other this past weekend. And so that excitement, the point I'm trying to make is that excitement is tempered because of the pandemic. You're watching the games, and the thought kept creeping into the back of my mind, particularly as it relates to college. Okay, are they going to be able to finish the season? Are people going to get sick? How many games will the SEC get in? Will you have a legitimate champion? So on and so forth. And so you can't really project out because something new is happening every day. It's complicated. There is no simple answer. Well, there is a simple answer if we follow the science, we follow the medical professionals, but we are complicated beings. We want what we want, even when it's complicated. So you have the science, which is the medicine. You have the economics of it all. I saw where the businesses that make money off Notre Dame football, the 8 home games that Notre Dame plays every year, gross about $17 million. And we say, well, money shouldn't enter into the equation, but it does. And then there's the human side of it, the young men wanting to play. They want to play. It's complicated. But is it really all that complicated? But I can remember this. My senior year, there were 3 black athletes on the football team at Auburn. We had to go and get tested for sickle cell because a football player had died. I think it was in Oklahoma, Colorado, somewhere. And this was new. My test was positive. I had to go to Birmingham, check into the hospital that Tuesday to see if, in fact, I had sickle cell disease. Our first game was that Saturday, and luckily it was in Birmingham. My biggest concern, of course, I didn't want to have sickle cell, which is no laughing matter by any means. But was I going to be out of the hospital in time to play in the game on Saturday? Luckily, I got out of the hospital that Friday. I don't have sickle cell disease. I do carry the sickle cell trait. But that's what I reflect back on when I think about the young men and knowing that they want to play. But also recognizing that we keep trying to go back to what was normal, and it's not normal anymore. It may never be that normal again because something new is happening every day. We will continue to make adjustments. We will have to make adjustments because adjustments are part of the new normal. So let me introduce my 2 roundtable guests, Barbara Wallace Edwards and Mychal Walker. Barbara Wallace Edwards lives in Birmingham. I don't know where she is today. I'll have to ask her when she comes on here. And then Mychal Walker, Barbara is retired from Blue Cross. Mychal Walker is president of the Walker Agency, a full-service insurance brokerage firm. So let me just throw this out here. First of all, Barbara, how are you? And what's happening in your world today? And where are you?
Good morning, Tom. How are you? How is everything?
Doing great.
I am actually in Birmingham today.
Oh my goodness!
I'm
I figured you were in Mozambique somewhere.
Not with the pandemic going on. I'm not moving too far from home. Okay. So, I'm here in town. And what's been going on? I'm trying to wrap my mind around the fact that we just celebrated the last holiday for the summer. I don't know where the year is gone. It's flying by. I checked last night and there's like 101 days left before we celebrate Christmas this year. It's hard to believe that it's already that time of the year. You walk into the stores now and they've got tons of Christmas decorations out and, you know, all these things. Normally by now I'm about finished with my Christmas shopping and I'm ready to start wrapping gifts. This year I hadn't even started. So I got a lot of catching up to do.
Well, it's going to be, it's that kind of a year with the pandemic and all of us being inside. And yeah, I think everything's going to be a little off this year. And again, that's that new normal. At least that's the normal for 2020. So Mychal, how are you, man? And what's going on in your world?
Well, I'm doing well, Tom. Thank you very much for asking. I hope you are too. And good morning to you, Barbara, as well. Let me tell you what's going on in my world. As you all know, I'm in the healthcare industry. We had some good news this past week. The Energy and Commerce Committee, they passed House Bill 2564, which is called the Medicare Enrollment Protection Act. What that means is people understand COBRA. Sometimes when you leave an employer, you go on COBRA for a while until you can figure out what you need to do as far as your healthcare plan moving forward. In the past, what has happened is when people got ready to retire and they went on COBRA for a while before they went into Medicare, they were penalized for delaying enrollment in Medicare and had an increase. Well, our association, the National Association of Health Underwriters, has been working on a bill to make COBRA credible coverage. And so the Energy and Commerce Committee, they passed that bill. It's now on to the House, which basically says when somebody goes on COBRA, it will not count against them and they will not receive a penalty once they go into Medicare. So that's good news.
Question. So it passed the Senate?
No.
It passed the House. Go ahead.
The Energy and Commerce Committee is where it originated.
Okay. In the House?
Yes, that's in the House, but It came out of committee. So it goes to committee. Once it comes out of committee, it'll go to the House.
Right.
And then the House votes on it, then it goes to the Senate.
And what are the chances of it passing both houses? I guess there's a question.
Well, I think that the chances of it passing the House is very good. And I think it'll be chances probably 70-80% of passing the Senate as well. This is something that needs to be done. And most of the senators and the congressmen are on board with this. As a matter of fact, it came out of the committee with a voice vote. They didn't even have to vote in person, just aye.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So let me, whenever I need to know something about sports, Mychal's the man I call on. So I know you sent me something about Joey Gatewood, who was a quarterback at Auburn University and left about halfway through the season and went to the University of Kentucky. You want to talk about that for a little bit?
Well, yes. As everyone knows that have even spoken to me, I always felt that Joey Gatewood was the best man for the job, to be honest with you. And I don't think he really got a fair shake. But in any event, he transferred to Kentucky after the LSU game last year, where he was supposed to go in the red zone, and the coach at Auburn pushed him back and wouldn't allow him to go in. And that was just heartbreaking for everybody. Well, he has been cleared. The NCAA cleared Joey Gatewood to play immediately this coming football season for Kentucky. Normally, when you transfer like that, you have to sit out a year. Turns out there's a gentleman agreement between Auburn and Kentucky where Auburn supported Gatewood's transfer. But the gentleman agreement is that Gatewood will not play against Auburn. And you know, Auburn opens up against Kentucky on September the 26th. I find that very ironic that Auburn and the coach that basically didn't give him a fair shot does not want his defense to have to face Joey Gatewood. What did that say?
That says an awful lot right there.
Good question. Good question.
That says a lot.
Well,
I mean, this guy wasn't good enough to be the starting quarterback at Auburn. So he leaves and go to Kentucky. He is cleared by the NCAA. Now that says a lot right there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because you all know that the NCAA, they normally hold people back.
Yeah, they
And
do.
they're real
Yes.
stringent.
They do.
Yes.
Okay. So he gets cleared, but Gus Malzahn doesn't want him to play against Auburn, but he's ready to play. So he can play the next week. He just can't play against Auburn.
Well, there's also another former Auburn quarterback was in the news. I think Malik Willis.
Malik Willis.
Where's he
Yes.
from? Atlanta? Is he?
Yes, he's from Atlanta. He played at Roswell High School.
Okay. And he's going to be the starting quarterback at Liberty. So those former Auburn quarterbacks are doing well in other places.
Throw Cam in the mix, and they're really doing well.
Well, that's right. Cam had a great, good game. It's sort of interesting that they compared Cam's game to Brady's game. And but New England,
I'm surprised.
They designed an offense for Brady. Brady got really harassed this past week playing with Tampa Bay as far as the pass rush. But at New England, man, Brady never got touched hardly. I mean, they got that ball out so quick. And so now it looks like they've designed an offense for Cam. And hopefully he's going to be very, very successful in it. I'll watch him.
Yes.
Well, like I said, I may become a New England fan this year. With Cam.
I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but I'll watch
him. Auburn has like 5 former players on New England Patriots team. So, I think I'm converted. I am a Patriots fan for now. We'll see if that changes later on. I should be converted because the Patriots drafted me out of college 100 years ago. But that situation didn't work out. But I should favor them, and I probably will. So let me ask you guys something about this COVID-19. And there's several issues here. There is the medical issue, which is what we should be listening to, I think. But there's also this economic issue, and then there's the fact that the young men want to play. And I heard a guy say the other day talking about the economy. Well, if we take care of the medical issues, we can take care of the economic issues. So let me just put that out there for a minute in terms of COVID. Do you think these guys are going to be able to finish a season? I don't see how football players can't get it. I love what the NBA has done. And they've even managed to find a way to put some fans in the stands. Right.
So just some opinion. What do you think?
Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I was going to say that I agree with the science and the medical community. However, I also see the other side of it, which is the business standpoint. I think we have to kind of look at something that goes hand in hand, or a plan that covers both. Provide the most protection possible for the players and allow them to continue on, and at the same time make an opportunity for people to make money and support their families. Okay.
I mean, that makes sense. Barbara?
Tom, I watched that Clemson and Wake Forest game the other night, and I cringed every time a player touched another player, because again, it's so dangerous. They're not wearing any type of protection. And they're coming in close contact with each other. There's no telling what was being spread out there on that football field. But on the other side, I do understand the economic impact. I looked at some numbers, and the mayor of Tuscaloosa said that Alabama football alone brings in between $180 and $200 million of economic impact on the city. And so, if the season doesn't go on, that's huge. Businesses could go out of, people could go out of business. People could lose their jobs. And so I understand the economic side of things, but at the same time, the medical side is really, something that they have to look at. It's scary.
Well, I agree with both of those, but and also then the young men, they want to play. And when you're a young man and this is what you've geared yourself for, maybe you're certainly not as rational as you would be when you're 50 years old. You'll look back and say, oh no, or like us, like, I'm not going outside. I'm not going to stay in a hotel. I'm not traveling on an airplane. but I
Right.
understand it from their standpoint and from their point of view. And it's just a tough situation. Go ahead, Michael.
Tom, before we leave this subject, I just want to let you know that the NFL made history this past weekend at the start of the NFL season. For the first time in the NFL, there were 10 black quarterbacks that started for 10 different NFL franchises. That's never been done before.
Wow. Yeah. That's been
That's
a long
huge.
time coming. Long
Yes.
time coming.
Now, on the flip side, I have to ask this question. Out of all the D1 schools, how many black head coaches are there?
How many are there? Do you know?
5 out of 133 Division I schools.
Wow. And what
But
schools are
80%.
they? Penn
Well-
State, Stanford, Vanderbilt. The 3 I know right offhand. Herm Edwards, and
Yes.
and the guy who was at Texas A&M.
Oh, yes.
I can't think of his name.
Kevin Sumlin.
Yeah.
Kevin Sumlin.
Now those are the
Yeah.
5
Yes.
I know. There may
That's
be
it.
more. Okay.
It's supposed to be
Wow.
5 out of 133 schools.
Wow.
Wow.
A lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. I thought it was
Absolutely.
interesting, and I thought it was interesting. And I, like I said, I didn't watch all of the games, but I watched, and maybe it was ESPN, but I guess for the national anthem, the players on one of the teams I was watching sort of did what was their personal preference. Some knelt, some stood, some had their hand over their heart, some stood at attention, whatever, which to me is what the flag was all about. The flag to me was, when I was in elementary school and we pledged allegiance to the flag every day, we never pledged allegiance to the military. I'm sorry, and I don't mean that
Right.
in any way. We never pledged
Right.
allegiance to the police. We
Right.
pledged allegiance to the fact that that flag gave all of us individual rights. It gave us rights as Americans. And that's what I saw when I saw, it doesn't bother me that somebody stands with their hand over their heart. It doesn't bother me that somebody kneels. I never really understood that controversy other than Colin Kaepernick was the first one to do it. And
Right.
he was like Muhammad Ali, Kurt Flood, and other people who introduced something new into the arena. So any final comments on that before we go to our special guest?
Well, I like to say that, as I recall, a part of the Pledge to Allegiance, isn't there a part in it that says freedom and justice for all?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
I rest my case. I rest my
point
case.
exactly. Right. I agree totally.
I used to always tell a friend of mine, I said, well, you lived in the land of the free. I grew up in the home of the brave.
There is a difference.
Okay, well, let me
Yes.
thank our sponsor, and then we're going to go to our special guest, and you guys will get to question him as well. Today's show is sponsored by Best Girl Inc. What is Best Girl? Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access, and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Our clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. We have a team of consultants led by Joyce Gossom and Miss Emily Hedrick, and they partner with business and education business clients to promote organizational effectiveness and education, motivation, and leadership. Our customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communications, executive coaching, fundraising, and some economic development. So let's go now to Everybody is a Star segment of our show. And I think we got a little clip we're going to show here.
She wasn't hit, sir.
Get her on the radio, please.
Sir, she can't talk right now.
Why can't she talk?
She's vomiting in the car. She's happened, sir. We'll be
Why
back.
is she vomiting?
It happens. It could be shock.
Ron.
She might have gotten an elbow in the
Gina
stomach.
with her?
Gina put her in the car.
She's not with her.
She's got 2 other agents in the car. She's got Mike and Fred, sir. They're going to have her back in the White House.
Why isn't Gina in the car?
Gina put Zoe in the car, then stayed behind for the ID agent. Mr. President, please.
Let me welcome our special guest today, Mychal ONeal. Mychal ONeal, the actor, the star. Mychal, welcome.
Good morning, Tom.
How are you?
I'm good. I get chills every time I see that clip, though.
Man, that's a hell of a cliff, I tell you. What was that like shooting that scene?
You know, we were in D.C. and they had it all blocked off. They were going to block it for us until sunrise. And that was really the first, big, powerful scene I had with Martin. So I was pretty keyed up about what they had written for me, and that scene goes on where I recognize that he's been shot and screaming to the driver, blue, 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 which is the code to get him to the hospital as quickly as possible. It was powerful, Tom. There was a man named Jerry Parr who was the guy who shoved Reagan in the car. And y'all were talking about football earlier. I had an old junior high football coach who's a cousin to Jerry Parr. And when he found out I was playing the head of the Secret Service, he reached out and put the two of us together. And he told me everything about that event. He told me when he realized that Reagan had been hit, the small bubbles, he realized because of the bubbles, it was a lung shot, the protocol for searching him, what they had to do because only 2 cars got out, and the fact that he took him to George Washington Hospital, which was totally out of protocol. All of it was, but it was a hospital that dealt with gunshots. So he reenacted literally all that stuff. So it was pretty exciting.
What was it like when you found out you had this job and you were going to be working with Martin? I mean, The West Wing was the hottest show on television.
Well, it was bittersweet. I hadn't worked. You know how it goes. I hadn't worked for a long time. I think this was probably August, and I hadn't had a gig since February. And, my wife was pregnant with twins.
Wow.
So somebody had to go to work. But it was also, everybody knew the writing on that show was so good.
Yes.
And, this initially was a 1-day role. And I said to my agents, I don't want to blow this show on 1 day. And they said, well, you need a job, buddy. You need to break down. So I went in, and it was Mr. Willis of Ohio. It was the sixth episode in the first season. And halfway, we were shooting one of the scenes where I was consulting with the president about a breach in the wall outside. And the script supervisor came over to me and said, hey, they like you upstairs. You'll be back. Now, you know this. You're an actor. Every time you hear that, you go, oh, you're never coming back, right? Then, they'll say nice, but you're never coming back. Well, they brought the character back. And I think we did 19 or 20 episodes with him over the course of a few years.
Oh man, that was great. I did that show as well, and there was politics involved, but I loved working with Martin Sheen, man. He was just a cool guy to work with.
Wonderful, man. Really, really. He was the father of the show. I always said John Spencer, Richard Schiff was kind of the conscience. John was the kind of guy that you look to in terms of the acting. But Martin there was just something so gracious and generous about it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. He was a good guy. So you grew up in Montgomery, Alabama.
Yeah.
You went to Auburn University.
Yeah.
And we ended up living about 5 miles from each other in Los Angeles. But we'd never really met formally. We'd been in college together. We grew up 100 miles from each other. We live in 5 miles from each other in Los Angeles. And then somebody in Los Angeles introduced her. And why don't you tell that story?
You should tell that story.
we both could tell the story. You go ahead.
We got Alfre Woodard, who you had done Miss Evers' Boys with, which is, I want to say, Tom, that's still one of the most beautiful performances that you did in that show. And Alfre had a 40th birthday party for her husband, Roger, and invited us both. I had worked with her on a film in the early 90s. You'd done Miss Evers' Boys with her. And Alfre's just one of those people, she's just one of those really good people that brings people together. So we came into that party, and I remember it was at that airport in Santa Monica. And she said, come over here. I got somebody you got to meet. I think she probably said the same thing to you.
She did.
That's Alfre. So we walked up, and I looked at Tom, and I went, I know him. I know him.
You did.
I remember you from Auburn. I remember the articles you wrote for the Plainsman. You were a contributor to the Plainsman, and of course, I knew you from playing ball. You were a big man on campus, and And I went, oh my gosh, how old were we at that time? We were old enough that there'd been a little water under the bridge.
That's right. That's right. It was a great night. And of course, Alfre's probably one of the best actors I ever worked with. And not only that, she's just a great human being and just a wonderful person to be around. So we're getting some stuff in the chat. Joyce said to tell you hi, Mychal O.
Good morning.
And Tim Arnold says hello.
All right, War Eagle.
Jeff Hedrick says he's so excited to see you on the show. That's Emily's dad. He's up in Maryland. And I want to ask you something before we talk a little bit about film and TV. Becky Davis Gibson says, War Eagle. You and I talked about football. And yeah, I played football in college. But you told me this great story about Auburn versus Georgia in 1971, and you couldn't, and it wasn't on, it was a great, I think both teams were undefeated. It was the game where Pat Sullivan literally won the Heisman Trophy, but you couldn't get a ticket. But you went anyway. Yeah. So tell me what happened. Tell everybody what you did.
Well, you know, I really wanted to see the ball game, and a couple of guys and I drove over from Auburn to Athens. None of us had tickets, and nobody was selling tickets when we got there because, you know, it was a sold-out game. It was the hottest game in the season, and for some reason, it wasn't on television. I don't remember it.
No, it wasn't. I don't remember why.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
But you were dressed out. You were in the stadium. Yeah. I got there, and there was a crowd of people going in one of the sort of back gates around an old dilapidated, you know, chain link fence, and I tried to sneak in, and they grabbed me by the collar and dragged me out of there. And I thought, oh man, I don't know how I'm gonna get to see this game. So then I noticed a bunch of people going around the outside of the stadium, and I followed them. I thought, well, they must know something. I don't know. I was pretty desperate at that point. So I followed them to a building on the UGA campus. I don't know what, it was tall. I know that it was a big building. So I followed them upstairs. We walked up, I don't know, to 9 or 10 or 12 flights of stairs. And we got to a thing, and there was an air conditioning vent. And they removed the cover to the vent, and we climbed up on the roof of the building and watched the game from up there. You know, it's like Dr. Stadium. You look down on the game. So I watched that game, and nobody arrested me. I was real happy about that. Great game.
It was a great game. It was absolutely wonderful. We were fortunate enough to win that game. The Georgia people, the fans, they did their part for the team because they kept us up all night by driving around the hotel parking lot, blowing their horns, running up, knocking on our doors and running. They did their part. And then after the game, they did their part in making sure we got out of there in a hurry because they got real ugly.
Yeah.
Started throwing things at us, and we had to run with our helmets on and got on the bus and had to bow down to keep. They were throwing those, I don't know if you remember, but those beer cans back in the day were like rocks, man. They weren't these little light aluminum cans. They were throwing full beer cans at us and all. But it was a great game.
Unbelievable. I remember Sullivan on that pass to the outside. He almost was going down. He had a guy draped on him, and he sidearmed the ball into the end zone. That's one of the greatest plays I ever saw for a touchdown. I think it was the winning touchdown.
Pat he was phenomenal. He was phenomenal to be with, and he was a great friend as well. So let me ask you a couple of things about the acting business and your part in it. You've done a lot of different roles, and you've specifically characterized yourself as a character actor. Who is your favorite character, and do you inhabit a character when you play it?
Favorite character I've ever played?
Yes.
Or ever watched?
I'd say played.
Because one of them that I watched was when you did Israel in NYPD Blue. That's one of the best characters I've ever seen. Phil.
Thank you.
You know, Tom, there have been a couple of them that have had a profound impact on me. This last one, you know, I can go back to the unit. Shields, who had been a member of the Delta Force, that was wounded in a helo crash and was in a wheelchair. I was watching something the other day where an actor was in a wheelchair. It's hard. It's physically hard to do, and to live it out and fully. So that one was And I thought it showed something about the cost of war. You know, we don't, the way they portrayed it, you know, the hero just didn't go unscathed. That was important. The West Wing was really important to me. But the last one that I did, this thing, Council of Dads, that's probably the closest to me I've ever played. Seabiscuit before that was pretty close, playing the father of those kids, you know, that I literally had to give up to let him try to support himself. Otherwise, I thought he'd be supporting the family. But Council of Dads was just, it was close to the bone. You know, the guy had a moral compass and he was flawed, but he was trying to do the right thing. And I identify with that a lot. You know, I break stuff a lot. That was very, very meaningful to me. That's been a hard one to let go of. But you know us looking for the next gig.
Well, yeah, sometimes they're hard to let go, especially when you get one that fits, that's right size.
Yeah.
Jeff Hedrick said Larry is one of the most compelling characters I've watched on TV in years. He moved me to tears every episode.
Yeah, Jeff, I said thank you. And tell him I think he did an incredible job with his daughter.
He can hear you. He can see you.
Well done, Jeff.
How did you prepare for that job? Did you go into Larry? Did you know a Larry, or did you just inhabit him?
You know,
he inhabited you.
He more inhabited me, Tom. Every once in a while that happens to you. It's rare, but he did. Larry inhabited me. There were enough points of contact between the two of us that all I had to do was kind of surrender to him and understand the circumstance that we were in together and try to live it out as fully as I could. They wrote a lot of that specifically for me. They pulled from my experience a lot. And that's why I say I learned a lot from Larry. I think I became a better parent as a result of that role. Or at least I hope I did. But you know, it's one of the things that continues to draw us to this work. There's something that you have to learn. Either you have to learn a skill or a profession, or as much as you can about it in a short period of time. This sort of printed on it, you know, in what I call our second skin. You know, as an actor, I think we have too, and it printed on that second skin in a way that really, I'm very, very grateful that I had a chance to do that character.
I am as well. It was absolutely wonderful to see you do it. So let's talk about maybe some of the other things that you've been on. Dallas Buyers Club. What was that like?
Well, I didn't recognize Matthew when I walked into the room.
What happened?
You know, I got cast late in that. I was flying back from LA to Birmingham, and I got a text from my agent saying, you have to read the script. They want you to divert to New Orleans. I said, no, I'm not diverting anywhere. I'm going home. I have to see my wife and kids in a couple of months. And so when I read the script from Houston to Birmingham, and I went, oh my gosh, I see what he means. I got to go do this role. So I spent a night, and then I flew down to New Orleans, but it was very quick. I had to jump right in. So my first scene is in the hospital room with him, and I go into the hospital. I can't find him. He's standing about 4.5 feet from me. I didn't recognize the man, Tom. He was so thin. You know, he was a different. It's interesting. I've noticed this a couple. I've had this experience twice. I saw Pacino do it. Sometimes an actor will get just free. Whatever impulse they have, whatever thought they have, whatever instinct, they can do it, boom, like that. And that's where Matthew was. He was flat out free to go in any direction in any moment that he wanted to with that character. And I went, oh man, you better bring your A game, because he's going to play. If you're going to play with him, you better bring it up. So it was a good challenge, you know.
It's always interesting when you have to go up with somebody who is a recognized quote star.
Yeah.
And the producers are looking at you.
Yeah.
To see what you bring to that scene or to that other person, because are you going to back down if they do something that isn't scripted, whatever? How do you handle it? And I remember doing this thing with Della Reese, this film, and man, they were like, are you going to be able to hang in there with Della? Are you going to be able to hang with Della? You know,
Yeah.
which of course upped the ante. And then the challenge became, you know, is Della going to be able to handle me? You know?
Yeah. Well, it is, you know, and it's funny because we were talking about Auburn before, but I think that put something in me. I suspect it did in you as well. You know, we put our pants on just like everybody else.
That's right.
And my job is to go in and give them something to play off of. Just like I'm taking my performance off of them, I want to make sure that they have something to pull from. And if I'm over there, you know, dodging them or blinking, I'm not helping either one of us. And I think we learned a lot, you know, at Auburn about just being a worker among workers, but a man among men, you know.
There was a show called The Court that never got off the ground. And it was about the Supreme Court. And I was hired to play General Stambaugh. And I don't know what he did because, like I said, we just did the pilot. And but we were in the White House, and they brought in it was Sally Fields, and she was going to be the star of the court. And the whole time I was sitting there, I just kept sitting there looking at her, thinking, "Man, that's the flying nun sitting over there." You know, I got to get over this. That's the flying nun right there. You know.
Yeah.
And so that's always been a funny thing when you see people. I remember I met Robert Culp, and man, I just always admired him.
Yeah.
And he was such a gracious guy. We had a chance to stand and talk for a while, and he was very, very gracious. So let me go ahead.
No, I just want to say, you know, it's interesting how the big ones are.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If they're genuine stars, there tends to be a real gracious.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, and I've worked with some guys that, you know, will be considered legends in our industry.
Yeah.
And man, the good ones, they have an ease about them. It's the ones that are, you know, a couple of rungs down. They're the ones you got to watch. You know
I think I told you about the one incident I had with the guy who was a couple of rungs down, and thought he was really, really special.
Yeah, he thought he was a couple of rungs above.
Yeah, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
And
Right.
you know, I'm sure that everybody's run into that in the business world. We just, you know, we just have to stand there with the camera rolling and go, "Oh man."
Exactly. J. Edgar, Clint Eastwood. You got to work with Clint Eastwood.
Oh wow. You know, I always wanted to, Tom. I so admired him, and you know, talking about sort of being starstruck. I had a scene with Leonardo DiCaprio where I'm playing an old Senator McCullough from up in Tennessee. He's one of the longest serving senators in the history of the Senate. One of the guys who was instrumental in getting the Tennessee Valley Authority started, the TVA.
Oh wow.
He's an old horse trader, you know, but I had this wonderful scene with Leonardo, except my eye kept going over to Mr. Eastwood. I kept looking over there, you know, Leonardo's over out there. I'm looking over here like it was a big part of it. And very economic, you know, he's not a guy that he's not going to waste a lot of time. And he's an actor's actor, but he's also an actor's director. But he thinks if you go ahead and get one take, good, move on. Yeah,
that's rare.
Yeah.
That's rare.
Yeah.
David Fincher, you may do 20, 25 takes.
Yeah.
Fight Club. We did take after take after take. We had Ed Norton, and we had the scene where we had to throw him on the table, and his ankle kept hitting the edge of the table. And after a while, his ankle, man, it was this big around, and we just kept shooting. You know, it's like about the 25th take. It's like, okay, I think we got it, you know.
He must do painting or something. He must paint with his frames. You know what I mean? I mean, directors have different things. You know, it's funny, in the old days when you and I started, there were directors that wouldn't even look at you. They'd sit next to the camera and just listen to the scene.
Yeah.
And if they heard that it was true, that was good enough for them. Now most of them are watching a monitor. You know, they want to see how it frames up on the screen or on the television, and it's just, you know, the technology's changed what we do and how we do it.
You talked about inhabiting a character, or a character inhabiting you, and you mentioned Israel. And man, Israel is probably the biggest challenge I ever had as an actor. And you know, you're playing a character that doesn't talk, and you're the lead character.
Yeah.
But you know what? I was living down on Venice at that time, and I would go down on Main Street in Santa Monica every morning for about a week. And I would buy a newspaper, and I'd buy coffee, and I'd sit there and I'd communicate with people, but I would never say a word.
Yeah.
And eventually I figured out, okay, I can make this work, you know? And the day I went for the audition, from the time I left home till that audition was over, I never said a word. And I went and registered with the lady there and didn't say anything. And eventually it just became second nature to be able to communicate without talking. And, you know, I became Israel. And so I'm going to, and you and I, normally we play good guys, you know, we play the nice guys. And so every now and then it's great to play a nasty guy.
You want to stretch the instrument there and find, you know, just, we didn't go into it to just play one thing.
So tell me about Grey's Anatomy there.
Well, that one still gets at me, you know. Yeah. You know, a couple of things happened there. One is I think they cast me in that role because of the West Wing, because, you know, Butterfield was a guy who solved problems and protected people, and so they really wanted to kind of flip the script on me, and so I ended up playing that guy who loses his wife. I mean, you know, people don't remember that all started when they unplugged his wife, and he begged them not to, or I begged them not to. And a lot of times, if that was the only thing that tethered him was her, and with her lost, he lost it. Walked back into the hospital, you know, a couple of months later with a 9mm and started shooting. That was probably the hardest work I've ever done, Tom. It was painful. It was just painful, you know, and I was a pariah on the set, you know, and nobody really wanted much to do with me because of what I was doing. One of the things I do remember, and it meant a lot to me, because after, you know, I'd been with him for a while, and one of the grips walked by one day, and they could tell I was in pain, you know, and my chair was isolated, I was away, and I listened to headphones a lot to keep myself, you know, in a space. And one of the grips walked by and just put a hand on my shoulder, kept going. And it was one of the kindest moments I've ever had filming. You know, he just let me know they can.
For those who didn't see that show, I think you played a character that after your wife had passed on the show, you came back to the hospital and sort of shot it up, so to speak. Yeah. And I love when you say, referencing the character, he lost it. Because you always separate yourself from the character when you're not acting. You know, that was that character over there, and so he lost it. And I can understand that, especially when I auditioned for a role once, and he was a nasty guy, man. And I really wanted to play it, and the guy who's one of the big producers in Hollywood, he said, "No, man, you're too nice to play this role."
Yeah.
But I want to be nasty, you know?
Yeah.
But he wouldn't let me be nasty. So
it's funny, they see one thing and they're not going to, you know, they're very, very hesitant to let you be something else. They want to, you know, I mean, we're actors. If they tell us to play this, we'll go figure out a way to play that. You know, it's funny, Tom, because when I was doing that guy, Clark, I did lose it after a while. 4 months is a long time to live with that kind of character.
Yeah.
And I got paranoid. I got up in the middle of the night and I would walk the perimeter of the property because I thought somebody was coming for my wife and kids. And I told Mary at one point, I said, "You got to go. You got to take these kids and get out of here." But, you know, you work on the character, and then if there's enough time, it'll start working on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you play him long enough. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let me invite Mychal and Barbara in. I know they probably got a couple of questions for you. And
I really enjoyed that conversation earlier.
so
Thank you very much.
one of you guys go on. Barbara, we'll let you go first. Ladies first.
Thank you. Mychal, I have watched pretty much everything you've been in, and I tell you, I'm just so impressed with all of your work. I feel honored to be in the presence of both you and Thom this morning. You know, you're both stars in my eyes. So in your virtual presence means an awful lot to me today. So thank you for all that you've done in the film industry. But I do have a question for you. I know you graduated from Auburn in 1974. When did you actually move to LA and get started in the business? What made you want to even get into the business?
Well, thank you for what you said too, Barbara. I really appreciate that. I feel very lucky that I've been able to continue to work, that they let the old guy still roam around. But I left almost immediately. I graduated in the winter of '74. I double majored and stayed on an extra quarter, and I left right on the heels of that and took off. I just, I think my life had been charmed, Barbara, and honestly, I wanted to see if I could survive having it roughed up, if I could put myself in a situation where I didn't know anybody or know anything, and see what would happen if I could survive it. And I didn't know anybody or anything, and they knew it when I got there. I can tell you, I heard you won't make it. Oh my, you won't make it. Oh gracious, you won't make it. And you say that to a Southerner enough, and we'll go, I'll show you whether I can make it or not. You don't know me well enough to tell me that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just kind of bit the and held on.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Mychal, let me just say, it's great having you on. I certainly enjoyed all the back and forth between you and Thom about your experiences and what have you. So it was quite entertaining. The question I need to ask you, it goes back to West Wing, and a part of the storyline in West Wing was like presidential advisors getting caught up with their personal ambition and their professional responsibility. Tell me about that experience, and how do you see that as it correlates to today and present day?
Well, it's funny, Mychal. They always said, and I didn't know this until I got around DC a lot, it's a mirror image of Hollywood. There's a tremendous amount of ambition and quite a lot of vanity. And so that look at me, or I want is in, both those houses. It's funny because by the nature of the character of playing the Secret Service agent, my obligation was to stay out of any of that. My obligation was to do one thing: to cover and extract, to protect the President of the United States. So there was no ambition other than that one task. And but as to how it relates to today, people tend to have their own agenda a lot, and depending upon who's got the stick, they're exercising a lot of personal, what's the word?
Discretion?
Well, or pathology. Yeah, there is a lot of personal discretion in it, but there's also a lot of snuggling up, and power's an interesting thing. I mean, I sensed a little of that because we spent enough time in DC. People are really drawn to it. They want to be next to it. It's a little bit like a moth to the flame. And depending upon how well you can fly and navigate that, you get to keep your wings, or you get them singed off. And I don't know if I'm being clear about this, but I think it's a tricky arena to get seduced by, and it's very, very seductive. And you can either do a lot of good or you can do a lot of damage with it.
Thank you.
And
Man,
many times. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, we were talking about you were talking about the COVID thing earlier, and I just wanted, it's funny. And I understand the kids wanting to play. You spent years and programmed to do a thing, and I've not gotten on an airplane. I've stayed as low profile as I can stay during this COVID thing. I've driven across the country 3 times because I had to get a child back to California. But I had to audition for something on Monday or Sunday, actually, to send it in on Monday. And if they cast me, I'd probably go because I've been programmed to go after the next job. You know, if you ask me to go to the grocery store, I look like, you know, but to do the job, you know, I don't know. We all have our I guess our little box that we work from, and
it's interesting that you say that because I've been the same way. I mean, I went to Birmingham to see my dad, my 95-year-old dad, and I spent about 3-4 hours with him, and then I turned around and drove 4 hours back home because I didn't want to hotel and didn't want to be around a lot of people. And I knew if I saw people, we'd be hanging out and all that stuff. So I haven't been anywhere other than that in 6 months, which is a long time for me because most of my adult life has been traveling either for some business purpose. And, you know, you talked about that. I remember flying from LA home one night to Florida and changed planes in Memphis. And they called me and said, hey, they need you back out here. Turned around and got back on the plane, went back to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you say that because I have an audition today that came in yesterday. And it's really interesting because I haven't been anywhere. I haven't wanted to go anywhere. I haven't tried to go anywhere. But I never hesitated to tell the agent, okay, I'm confirmed.
Yeah,
I'll do it. And we'll shoot it here in the office. And I'll send it to them. And, you know, the job's in New Orleans. It would require 2 weeks quarantine, which means you're going to be there for a lot longer than you planned on.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. I never hesitated that this is something I won't do. It becomes a part of your fabric.
Yeah. We go and call. Now there's a great difference in what you and I do and having those young men down in the trenches. You know,
agreed.
300 pounds moving one another around, as Barbara was talking about earlier. Every time they touch one another, they're not just touching; they're manhandling. They're blowing a lot of air down there, and so it, you know, at least because of you and I have a union that protects us. They tell me the same thing. You quarantine for 2 months and don't expect to be back until December. So what they're doing is they bring a guest in. They put you in the bubble and you stay in the bubble until they finish with you, and then they'll send you out again. Exactly.
So
we've got protections. No, it's just, you know, I know that I've been talking to the union a lot. There are a lot of protections in place, probably more than I have when I move, certainly more than I have than when I move around here. But it's pause for thought at my age, you know, to go back out. But I didn't pause at all. I put that audition on.
I know.
Let me put my boots on. Let's go.
I thought about it afterwards and thought about, okay, is this something that I really, really want to do? I was actually surprised when I got the call because I thought we were still pretty much shut down.
Yeah. Now kicking back up.
Yeah. Barbara, Mychal, anything else? Any other questions or comments?
No, I'm fine. I thoroughly enjoyed the segment. Thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely. Great show.
Mychal,
when this all ends, Barbara, if we're both in Birmingham, can we get together sometime? I'd love to see you.
Absolutely, Mychal. Please, let me know when you're available. We can, you know, I'll go out now, social distance, you know, wear a mask and everything else. So yeah, you just let me know your schedule. I'll work around it.
Sounds great.
You know what's funny, Barbara, before you go, if I'm watching something on television,
yes,
and it'll flash in my mind if they are respectable distance apart, if they're too close, or if it's a scene from an older film and you say, oh man, they couldn't do that today. They couldn't be sitting there like that today.
Yes,
it's amazing how ingrained it's become in our heads over these past just few months, really.
Right. Oh yeah.
You know, I'll probably wear a mask on an airplane for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Right. Mask and gloves. That's me. And goggles. I've gotten goggles now, so I'm going to be prepared all the way around if I get on the airplane.
Well, it's as I say, it's a new normal, and what normal will be on the other side of this new normal, we don't really have a clue.
Yeah,
This may be our new normal.
Figure it out. We're trying to just work our way through it, and I think for the young men playing football, I understand, and just hope that everything, there's talk now of long range complications for this thing, and hopefully all that'll work out. Okay, let's see. Daryl says, another great show, Tom. I pray that you have a blessed and amazing day. Much love, my brother. Stay prayerful and stay safe. Mychal, oh, you'll have to meet Daryl. Daryl was on our first show. Big D, I call him.
Big D.
Yeah, and he's a great guy. He's written a great book. And Big D, I hope you're having a good day up there today. I don't know if this hurricane will come through there or if it'll miss you guys, because I think it's going to curve over towards Birmingham and Atlanta once it comes ashore. So I appreciate it. It's been absolutely wonderful. Let me close out with a couple of quotes. The first one is from Robert Kennedy, and he says, there are people in every time and every land who want to stop history in its tracks. They fear the future. They mistrust the present and invoke the security of a comfortable past, which in fact never existed. Robert Kennedy. And this is appropriate for today. It's by my main man, Muhammad Ali. The man who has no imagination has no wings. And I think we've been talking a lot about imagination today. So I want to thank Mychal Walker, Barbara Wallace Edwards, Mychal ONeal. I want to thank Best Girl for the sponsorship. I want to thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator, and our producer, and thank Jones and Company for their music, Going Coastal. The music that you hear at the beginning of the show and at the end of the show is by Jones and Company. And our guest next week will be Dr. Cheryl Jones, whose music you hear. And I've used her music in a couple of my performances, productions. Use it in my play, Speak of Me As I Am. And Cheryl's going to be with us, and she'll put on a little mini concert for us. Should be great. So thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully we'll make it through this hurricane safely. And we will see you next week. I'll see you then. Enjoy yourself and make every day count. Peace.